everyone, welcome back to my channel and my craft table, and welcome to another day of summer crafting fun. In today's video, I'm working on some Father's Day cards, so I want to take you along on that journey. Hopefully I can give you a little bit of inspiration. So let's go ahead and just get right into the project. All right, this is the card that I'm going to recreate with you here today. So I made this card the other night while I was just playing around with my crafty stash. And I got to thinking, this is such a fabulous card that I definitely wanted to bring it to the channel. I've got a couple of 3D elements. I've got a variety of colors, which you don't have to use all these colors when you're doing a stencil like this. You could just pick a couple. And then I have a heat embossed sentiment. So I wanted to recreate this with you here today on camera. So let's go ahead and get started with today's project. And I'm going to bring in my grip mat. This is just a big 9x12 sticky grip mat from Altenew. I'm going to take my paper here. This is just a 4.5 or 4.25 by 5.5 sheet of paper. I'm going to go ahead and put that down here on the grip mat. Then I am going to bring in a little bit of tape because I'm going to be marking off the corners here. You could totally do that with Post-it notes. Now, if you've never used a Postage collage stencil from Waffle, they will always tell you if there's anything that coordinates with it, and they will always give you some ideas on the color scheme and how to do it. I like to kind of check their website for inspiration and then go from there, mixing and changing the colors that I want to use. So there are 5 stencils. And each one of these brings a different element or layer of the card to life. And there is like a etched line all the way around right here that will lay on the corners of your cardstock. So I'm just lining up my cardstock with the stencil. Now, right around here, there is an etched line. It is hard for you to see on camera, but it is on the stencil. I'll show you right here. See that bottom etched line right here? So that helps you line up with each subsequent layer. And then you can also see that it'll tell you suggested colors, okay, and kind of what you're working with. And it will also have the number of the stencil. So this is like number 2. Now, I do like to go ahead and right out here in the corner, I like to make an L shape. And the reason for this is so that I can make sure between lining my stencil up with my cardstock and the previous layers design, but this is also helpful to me to make sure that my stencil is going right back in the same place that it needs to go. All right, so I have my sticky mat here. On my sticky mat, I have my 4.25 by 5.5 piece of cardstock. Then I have the stencil. Now, what I like about Waffle stencils is on the top of the stencil, let me see if I can get it to, it'll give you a number, so like number 2 of 5. It will have suggested colors for you to use. You can use whatever colors you want. And then a lot of times it will just tell you like what it is that you're working with. So like this one here, you're actually working with the basketball. Here they suggested to use orange or even just skip the stenciling. So I'm going to take you through each of these layers, and this is going to be such a fun card. So most of the inks that I'm using today are Distress Oxide. And what I like about them is that they have this beautiful, soft finish. It's almost chalky, but not really. And I just think that they blend beautifully. They work well with each other, and then you can still layer on top of those with any dye inks that you may need to bring in for your project. So this first one is the Salvaged Patina. Just going to load my brush up right here, And I'm going to do it all over background. Okay, so I think I am done with the salvage patina, and I can just kind of set that off to the side. And then I like to go through my stencil and just wipe it down. This allows me to kind of soften any ink that may be uneven, also get it off of my stencil so that later when I clean them, it's a little bit easier. Okay, we're going to pull up stencil number 1. And this is what we have so far. So this looks fantastic. Okay, so now we're going to go on to stencil number 2. Now, with stencil number 2, I need to get this lined up so that when I do my subsequent layers, everything, meshes into place where it needs to be. I'm going to take my time and get this all lined up here. Press that back down into place. For instance, okay, so in stencil number 2, I'm going to be using a variety of colors. So I have the Uncharted Mariner, I have Lumberjack Plaid, I have Rusty Hinge, and Spiced Marmalade. And I do have a little bit of white for the mug. So some of these larger spots, sometimes it's easier just to clean off the head of your brush. I usually just rub it on like a towel like this or some paper towels. I honestly do not wash my brushes. Alright, so this is stencil number 2. We're going to pull this up and move it out of the way. And this is looking so good. Now I do notice that the brush that I originally used was not the best plan. So I actually need to bring my cup back in. I'll line that handle back up. And I'm just going to go around the edge of my cup again with my salvage patina, just to make sure that I got all of the white. So there we go. And I know you can't see it very well, but this is almost like a cream color. Okay, so next we're going to move on to stencil number 3. Now, stencil number 3 is where you're really going to start seeing a lot of the elements come into play. I'm going to take my time, and I'm going to line things up. Now for this one, I am going to be bringing in a few other colors. So for a little book over there, okay, and for the cooker, I'm going to be using this Mowed Lawn. And then for the slippers, I'm going to bring back in my Rusty Hinge. I am also going to be using Hickory Smoke. I think that I want to use peacock feathers for some of these books. I still have a heart and the stitching on my little baseball there. And then I have the char marks of the hot dogs. And I think I'm going to actually, I was going to use black soot, but I think what I actually want to do is I want to use vintage photo. That way it's not as stark. Alright, so next let's take a look and see if there's anything we need to adjust or change or fix. So this is stencil number 3. Looks like there's quite a bit of contrast against the books in the background, so I'm going to go ahead and leave that. The hot dogs and the cooker look fantastic. The heart and all of that, everything looks great. So I think I will go ahead, remove stencil number 3 so we can move on to stencil number 4. All right, so stencil number 4 can bring in even more elements. So let me get these lined up again. Okay, now for stencil number 4, I'm going to bring in a dye ink this time. I'm going to do Capri for the little bit of the chair here. All right, I'm going to do black soot for my little toolbox right there. For the books, I'm going to go ahead and bring back in the mowed lawn. For the coffee down here, I'm going to have the vintage photo will be the coffee, and the handle will be black soot again. As far as the football, I will go ahead and use vintage photo, but then I'm going to blend it with a copper. This copper is so pretty, so we're going to do that. Then I'm going to have the hickory smoke here for the cooker, and then I'll have black soot for that bar again. So this is the color scheme for this particular stencil. Let's take a look at stencil number 4. Oh, that's looking so good. Now we are on to our last stencil. Okay, and I'm going to get these fine little details in. Okay, so here's going to be the detail of the book that's on top of the recliner and the slippers. Then we're going to have the detail of the tools. We have details to our book. We have Dad, we have cooker, and then we have over here we have our little football stitching. All right, so for the last stencil here, I am going to be bringing in Rustic Wilderness. I want to do vintage photo. I am actually this time going to need my silver metallic. I'll need my black soot again. I'm going to use a white gel pen for the football. We need black soot for the basketball as well. Let's see, more silver for the tools. Okay, and then for the books over here, I'm going to use Rustic Wilderness again, and then I want to use Capri and Cranberry to bring out the details of my books. Actually, I think I'm going to change my mind. I might do Uncharted Mariner for the blue books over here. We'll see what that looks like. Before we move it, I need to do the football. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my gel pen, and use my hand, get it nice and flowing, and then I'm going to draw a line down the middle of my football. Here we go. And now we can pull up Stencil 5 and take a look. That is looking pretty good. All right, this looks so good. I am going to pull up my mat. I'm going to bend it back just like as if it was a Cricut mat, and I'm going to pull this off, and that way it stays flat. And I'll just set that aside. And then I want to come in here and I want to put some little elements from my gel pen. All right, I'm thinking that looks pretty good. And you just put them where you think they need to go. They're, you know, I don't do shading and lights and all of that because I'm definitely not a professional artist. All right, next. Okay, so we're going to be doing a couple of things. We're going to use our Postage collage on the actual card front. On this black layer here, we are going to use a nested rectangle. Oops, I'm just going to use that one there. In fact, before I choose that one, I'm just going to double check. Yes, that is the correct one. All right, I'm just going to bring in my little Platinum 6. And we're going to get these die cut. Whenever you do anything, if you have a manual die cutting machine or you're thinking about getting one, I definitely recommend the Spellbinders Platinum 6. I have thoroughly enjoyed it. I have had no issues at all whatsoever, and it has definitely done the job every time. Okay, I'm going to get this just locked into place. And notice that it is on a diagonal. When you send rectangle and square things through your die cutting machine, you do want to have it a little bit at an angle so that it doesn't put too much undue pressure on your machine. Okay. And then this is just going to pop out. Right. And wow, that is the first time this has ever happened. Do you see all of those little dots? All of them came out of and stayed in the die all at one time. That is fantastic. Now, if you ever have something like this and you're you want to know how to get all those little dots out kind of all at one time, you can just run. It works a lot better if it's on cardstock, but you can just kind of run your little pokey tools or your tweezers along the edge. Definitely on the cardstock, they just fall right out. All right, so that looks amazing. Let's take care of our layering piece. So again, I'm going to put it on the diagonal, get this into place. Okay, so next we need to work on our sentiment and a couple of different design elements that I want to add to the card. So I'm going to put this black cardstock right in here in the corner of my MISTI, and I'm going to grab this stamp that says Happy Father's Day. Okay. And this cardstock is wanting to curl a little bit, so I'll just go ahead and help that with some tape. Okay, we'll just put that right in there. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat emboss this sentiment. All right, so I've got my sentiment in there, and I'm going to use some anti-static powder. This is going to help the ink just stay where it needs to, and the embossing powder to not stick to my cardstock where it does not need to. Right. Another benefit to the anti-static powder, especially on a dark cardstock, is like I can see the coverage of my little stamping here. Okay, so I think 3 is probably good. All right, next I'm going to bring in just a piece of copy paper from my computer, from my printer. And then I'm just going to grab my white embossing powder, sprinkle that on, and I'm going to let it sit for just a second, kind of tap it around. Let it just get nice and stuck on there, and then pour it off and tap away. Okay. And then I'm just going to do it one more time. I'm going to let that set off to the side for just a moment and pour this back in. Embossing powder is so fun. Embossing powder and hot foiling sentiments. 2 of my favorite ways to do a sentiment. Then I'm just going to give this a nice wipe. Make sure we don't have any embossing powder everywhere. All right, now I have my little heat tool here. It gets really, really hot, and I am going to heat this up for about 30 seconds. Make sure it is super, super hot, and then I'm going to start melting the embossing powder from the back side of the cardstock. Now that this is done, I'm going to double check that it looks all smooth and glossy. Heating it from the back is great for getting a smooth, glossy finish. Okay, and I'm going to rub my fingers back over this black cardstock just to give it its shine back again from the anti-static powder. Okay. And we're going to be die cutting this out momentarily. Okay. So to die cut this, I'm just going to use my sentiment banners from Pretty Pink Posh. The next thing that we need to do is get these little 3D elements. Okay, so this is actually like a little template right here. And I'll explain to you why I have that. When I was first making this card, on this heart right here and on this right here, you can see where they're not centered. So we are going to use our little template here so that we make sure that we get everything centered the way we want. All right, I'm going to bring in this cardstock. This is heavyweight cardstock. Okay, so now I have the cardstock in the corner of my Misty. I'm going to put down the number 1 dad and the heart. I do need to pick up this one, and I'm going to clean that off here in just a few minutes. I'm going to go ahead and close the door to my Misty, pick it back up. I'm going to use my VersaFine Clear Nocturne ink for my little ribbon here. Okay, and then I'm going to use that cranberry for the heart. We're going to make our heart nice and red. Okay, give that a gentle press. Actually, that needs to go back down just a little bit more. I'm definitely going to ink up the heart probably 1 or 2 more times. Now, as far as the dad is concerned, I'm not real happy with how that's coming out. So I may need to flip my cardstock around. Let's give it one more go, and if I don't like it still, then we will flip the cardstock and redo that. Yeah, I really don't like this. It looks very fuzzy. The heart is looking great, so I'm going to be done with that. Wipe this off here. I'm going to flip my cardstock around. Okay. And just for good measure, I'm going to make sure that this stamp is really clean. Okay, so we're going to give this a go again. Let that sit for just a second. Oh, that is so much better. I think I see one tiny little spot, and we will just do that one more time. When it comes to sentiments, I try not to push too hard on them because you don't want them to be fuzzy or splayed out or anything like that. I'm going to clean this off. And while this is drying right here, I'm going to put all of my little stamps back where they need to go. And then I'm going to grab 2 alcohol markers. We're going to color our little ribbon. Now, we do not want this one. We just want that one there. All right, I'm going to grab some scissors, and we are going to die cut out these tiny little pieces. And what I am really liking is the fact that, well, let's do it this way. When you have a little template like this, if you place this die cut open area over your stamped image, you can get your image centered the way you want within where that die cut is going to be. And just make sure that you like that placement and that it's not, too off center to one side or the other. And then you take your die cut and you just pop it right down into that little spot. It's almost like a little puzzle piece. You can feel it lock in there, and then you can just tape that into place. Okay, and we can do the same thing for this side, making sure that heart is centered. All right, and then we'll just run these through. And then we have our little die cut piece, and it is pretty well centered. Same thing with our little heart. Okay, so that's just a little tip as far as your die cuts are concerned when you're doing some coloring, is die cut out the little spot so that you can then use it like a little template. And then I can save this for the next time that I use this particular set. Okay, next we're going to do our sentiment, and I'm thinking, okay, now this one, you got to be strategically careful. I am using a magnetic mat for this small one. We can get that. We don't want it to move because that Father's Day is heat embossed. It looks great, and we don't want it to move. We want it to be fully centered. Okay, so I'm going to run this through. And now we have our Father's Day heat embossed sentiment. How nice. So now what I want to do is I want to go through and I want to stamp on these cute little glasses. Super tiny, but so cute. Bring back in my little black pigment ink. Ink that up. And then just like in my last card, I'm just going to put these kind of like right here where that book is. I'm going to press down. I'm not going to rock it. And I'm going to pull it right back up. We are going to put Love You. Pressing down, not rocking, let it sit there and transfer for 1 second and pull it up. Okay. One more. This says Best Dad Ever, and we're going to put it on top of our little toolbox right there. This is such a cute little stamp set. It's mom and dad. So it says all of these little sentiments. Let me bring this a little closer to me. I'll try and not get my head in the way. All right, Best Dad Ever. Okay, so we have all of that. Looking good. And then finally, here is our little card that we're going to use. I'm just going to stuck that down like that. All right, and then I'm going to bring in this brush. Now, I don't want to put a lot on here. I want this to be very, very soft. I just want to kind of come in from the edge. I don't even really want it to be a lot of ink. So I'm just going to tap off, and I'm going to start in this corner. And I'm just going to kind of fade up. Okay, so kind of like that, and then I'm just going to spread that out kind of in a diagonal fashion. I'm not even putting any more ink on my brush. I'm just going through. Okay, and then this is what you'll get, and it's super faded. It's perfect, and it just gives a little something on the inside. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and get this card built. So I have my card base right here, and I'm going to turn it over and put one of these little stickers on here. I like doing these, kind of seasonal ones, but I have been contemplating finally getting like an actual stamp. Put it look like that. Great. Okay. And then I'm going to place this just like that because I don't want that to really move. I'm just going to take my liquid glue, put some on the back of this cardstock, and then I'm going to center that. All right, then we are going to get some things on the back of these. As far as the heart is concerned, I have a tiny little piece of this 2mm foam squares, and then we can take one big one and put it there. And let's see, is this too long? Is that going to be too long? It is. So I just need about half of that. All right, so we got both of those. And then I have a new foam tape that I want to try. So I'm basically going to use it on the sentiment. And so this is about 1.5 millimeters in height. It is a 1/4 inch thick, like side, a 1/4 inch wide. On the back of here, now there's a couple things you could do. You could, if you felt like it, you could always cut these apart and do like a little collage. Absolutely something you could totally do. I am going to cut down this foam. So this is double-sided adhesive tape, and I have a piece of craft foam sandwiched in between. Okay. And I'm going to go through and I'm just going to put pieces of this foam panel, and that way this will be popped up on my card, but it won't be too thick. All right, now I just need to pull the release papers off of the backer here. Next, I'm just pulling off the release paper from the double-sided tape that I have the craft foam sandwiched in between. I really like this method of dimension. This is courtesy of Carissa Wiley. Genius idea she had, and I love it. Okay, I'm going to take this and I'm going to center it over my panel. In fact, I'm going to bring this down just a bit so I can see what I'm doing. I want to get this centered. Press that down. Then as far as the heart, I thought it was so cute when I took a 3-dimensional heart and I placed it here on top of the mug. It was so perfect. I think for Father's Day, I think I'm going to just put it right kind of here in the middle. And then as far as the ribbon, I'm going to pull this release paper up and I'm going to add another layer because I'm going to put it right here. And I already have foam tape right there, so I do kind of have to bump it up. This is not going in the mail, so I'm not worried about postage. Because normally I would never put this much dimension, but I'm going to just put this right like here. So that's popped up considerably more than this, and then there's a piece of that little foam square underneath there is giving that the level height that it needs. All right, these cards came out super good. This was my original, and this is fantastic. I really love it. This chair here is very similar to the chair at my dad's house, the chair that he sits in. And I just think this is super fun. I went ahead and made the second version in this blue chair that looks like the one down in my living room that my husband loves so much. These are both unique yet very similar, and I just think they came out great. Different color scheme and placement of the 3D elements, and just enough to give them their own unique spin. Let me know down in the comments which one of these is your favorite. Would you say blue suede, or brown suede. Of course, I'm leaning toward blue suede. Also, don't forget to like the video, hype the video, that's even better. Comment down below, like the video. Oh, and you could even share this with your crafty friends. I will link below in the description all supplies and materials that I used today. And until I see you in the next card or craft, as always, have an amazing day and happy crafting. Hello, crafty friends. Thanks for making it to the end with me. I'm so glad you were here to share in the crafty fun. Here are a couple more videos that I think you might find inspiring. And don't forget to like, comment below, and subscribe. So until I see you in the next video, have a great day, and as always, happy crafting.